Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Welcome to Newsroom. I'm your host, Khalid. But today is the 1st of June 2023. We'll begin this month with our first show with some good news as far as the economy is concerned. The government has reduced oil prices for a fortnight, but of course is a relatively good development as far as the layman in Pakistan is concerned. Also, if we remember well, on the 26th of May, the government had reduced the prices of ghee and edible oil as well. Now with that, what has also happened is that the Pakistani rupee has witnessed a significant appreciation against the US dollar in the open market, and this has happened today as well. It was being quoted at between 295 to 300 rupees as per around 314 rupees just a day back. So of course, good news, the economy is strengthening, the investor sentiment seems to be going in the right direction, and that is positive. This is going to be our first story. Our second story, ladies and gentlemen, concerns the virtual SCO summit that is being held by India, of course, because India is heading the SCO for the moment. And India has decided that this SCO summit is going to be a virtual SCO summit. Why is a virtual SCO summit being held now in these days when the COVID threat has more or less emanated? Is this because of Russia? Is it because of China? Is it because of Pakistan? We will be asking all those questions in our second segment. Then we'll be talking about our Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif, who is leaving for Turkey on the invitation of Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan, the newly re-elected president of Turkey. He will be attending the inauguration ceremony of Mr. Erdogan in Ankara on the 3rd of this month, that is the day after tomorrow. Also, finally, we'll be talking about the US House of Representatives that has voted to advance a bipartisan bill that will increase the debt ceiling, which limits the amount of money the federal government can borrow, because, of course, the US government, there was a huge risk that it might move into default. This is a term that we usually associate with developing countries, but even the US could have gone through it had this law not been passed. But now it is going to go to the Senate, where there's a Democratic majority. What will happen? Will this bill ultimately be passed? This is what I think, but this is going to be our last story. Let's begin with our first, and that concerns Pakistan's economy and some good news concerning the layman or the citizens of Pakistan. A, the government has reduced the oil prices. B, a lot of efforts are being made by the current government to give relief to the masses, as has been said by the Prime Minister, as has been said by Mr. Ishaq Dar as well. Also, Pakistan rupee has appreciated against the dollar more in the following report.
Pakistan is navigating a difficult economic landscape, but the current government has introduced a number of policies initiatives to bring stability and growth in the economy and improving ease of doing business. Finance Minister Ishaq Dar has vowed to present a business-friendly budget in order to avoid further burdening the poor. Pakistan has completed all technical formalities for the 9th review of the International Monetary Fund's program, and there are high hopes that the staff-level agreement would be reached with the IMF before the new budget, which would be presented. Government's dedication to provide relief to masses is bringing momentous outcome, as the Pakistani rupee witnessed a significant appreciation against US dollar in the open market. The government of Pakistan has announced a significant reduction in the price of petrol, which is being reduced by 8 rupees, and high-speed diesel by 5 rupees per litre for the next fortnight. Showing signs of stable economy, current account deficit declined by 68% to $3.8 billion during the first 8 months of the current fiscal year, from $12 billion during the same period last year. Overcoming the present economic and financial challenges requires sustained policy efforts and reforms for Pakistan to regain strong and inclusive growth, and government is committed to this cherished goal.
To discuss this issue, we've been joined by Muhammad Shaaf Nakib. He's an economist. Thank you very much, Shaaf, to have joined us. I'd like to begin with this decision that has been taken concerning, of course, the oil prices that have been reduced for a fortnight. What kind of effect do you feel as an economist is it going to have on the masses in Pakistan?
Thank you, Omar, for having me at the show. What I think, of course, the oil prices globally had been on a decreasing trend over the recent past. So it's very good of the government, I'd say, that they have passed on that relief to the common people, and that would, of course, it is going to help in reducing all the transportation costs and the out-of-the-pocket expenditure of the general public, as well as reducing the transportation costs in our supply chain as well. But I think that also does present a challenge to the government when the inflation figures are slightly higher, and in May we have recorded one of the highest inflation figures ever. So I think it's important to see that signaling as well, and I think if if the inflation isn't able to come down in the next few months, we could say, or over the next couple of months, then this reduction of oil prices might not be able to extend the entire benefit as the government hopes to. So I think initially it's a good thing that the government has passed on the relief that it got from the global prices decrease to the common people. But the inflation is a big challenge for the government, and with the upcoming budget, we hope that the government will be addressing that issue. It will be bringing in policies and measures that will help control inflation, and coupling with the reduced oil prices, that is going to extend the benefit to the general public and overall economic situation of the country.
Now, Shaaf, we talk about the budget that is going to be presented in a couple of days in the month of June. Before that, I mean, before even the oil prices were slashed, we had heard about the decision of the government reducing the prices of ghee and edible oil, ghee by 69 rupees, edible oil by 76 rupees per kilogram. Of course, that was also to give relief to the masses. Also, our Prime Minister, Mr. Shehbaz Sharif Saab, has said that public relief is going to be a top priority as far as this budget is concerned. How important is it for the government to give a maximum relief to the masses, whether it be through the budget or through efforts such as reducing the price of oil or reducing the price of ghee and edible oil as well?
Well, you have rightly pointed out, the things that you have mentioned, these are things that are very common in use, very inelastic demand, not entirely inelastic, but still there's even with change in prices, you cannot reduce the consumption of, you could say, things like edible oil as well as petroleum products to a large extent. So, of course, a reduction in price of those is going to help the general public. And I think often in our discourse, what we ignore is the fact that sometimes the government's hands are tied based on how the global prices are moving, right? But this time, when the global prices have also reduced, so I think it's a very intelligent move on the part of the government that they have tried to pass on that relief as much as it could towards the general public, and it's going to help them in the future as well. But what we need to understand is, of course, that the entire supply chain bases its, you could say, money demand or the cost demand, not just based on the petroleum products or something, but on the overall inflation in the economy. And as I've said, that the cost of businesses has gone up due to various inflationary measures and all that. So, of course, there will be some response due to these reduced prices, but it has to be seen how it impacts the overall inflation. And once we see a slightly downward trend in that, we'll see that the entire supply chain would respond more positively to this decrease in oil product in the price of the petroleum products, and that will eventually help the entire general public as well and help the government pass on much greater relief to the public.
All right. I mean, talking of relief to the public, I'd like to highlight two things, and I'd like your point of view on that. The Prime Minister recently said that while chairing a meeting to discuss the budget proposals for the industrial sector, he said the federal budget is going to include measures to enhance the industrial growth and boost exports. A, how important is this statement? B, the Economic has also approved 1.2 trillion rupees of development projects. Do you feel these two measures are also side by side extremely important for the small and medium, for the SMEs, for the industrial sector that needs as much of stability and backing of the government as possible?
I think in the recently released figures by the National Accounts Committee, in this year, unfortunately, we saw a decrease in the growth of the large scale manufacturing. Right. So for the next year, it's going to be even more important for the government to facilitate the large scale manufacturing sector so that they can grow, unlike this year, and contribute to the overall economy as well. But I think it's good that the Prime Minister's statements and the Finance Minister's statements, they are signaling that they're trying to do something. But I think what also needs to be done apart from these measures is increase the ease of business overall. Because given
but that
how
is also one of the points that the government is working towards, ease of doing business. We're hearing a lot of this term in the last few days, in the last few weeks. Let's hope, all these efforts prove, give certain fruits or come to fruition in the coming days. While also the budget, we are also looking forward to the budget that it be people friendly. Now, there's another thing that has happened at the same time, and that is the rupee that has appreciated versus the dollar. What do you attribute that to?
I think over the last month or couple of months, the gap between the interbank rate and the open market rate was increasing, and that was creating, of course, a lot of troubles for the official channels and transfers, because a lot of people were turning towards, maybe you could say, away from the banking sector. So the recent notification by the State Bank of Pakistan regarding where the banks have been allowed to use the interbank rate for credit card and debit card transactions. That has helped reduce the gap between the open market and the interbank rate. So that's going to help them in, you could say, easing the transaction process in the country as well. So that poses one challenge. Of course, that means that there would be an increase in the capital outflow in terms of those transactions. But what that also helps us, the decrease in the gap between the open market and the interbank rate, is that the remittances that had seen a slight fall in the past few months, a lot of those would move towards the could move towards the banking channel. We hope that they do, so that the overall net impact happens in shape of increased capital inflow. And I think, given how there has been a slight stalemate with the IMF regarding the next program as well, one of the major issues in that was the gap between the interbank
That is
rate
what I
as
was
well
trying to
as
ask
the
you
open
as
market.
well.
Yes.
This is
Yeah.
one of the
So that
preconditions
is
of
going
the
to be a
IMF,
very
and so now Pakistan has, abided by this gap. And of course,
so actually, yes.
yes,
Yes,
go
so
ahead.
basically that gap closing without any, you could say, intervention into the market, but through a slight regulatory change, that is going to actually help and ease within those process. So hopefully, when the next budget is announced, the government has a good plan, to meet their financing gap, if whether through IMF or through other sources as well, because that's going to be a major challenge for them.
Now, Shaaf, Minister for State for Finance Aisha Ghaus Pasha on Wednesday has said the Prime Minister and the Ministry of Finance remain in total commitment to the IMF program. We are not thinking anything without the fund program. What are the prospects, in your point of view, of the revival of the IMF program?
I think, given the recent statement, of course, that the IMF Mission Chief gave regarding Pakistan's situation, I think that there is some good progress, and we could hope that there is going to be actually a revival of the fund program. But I think what we also need to do is we also need to start thinking beyond the fund program. That, okay, once the fund program comes in, what are the reforms that we need to bring in? And I think that's going to be important. How we reduce our expenditure by minimizing, useless expenditure, and also increase our revenue, not just by increasing the tax rates or taxes, but also by making use of the debt capital within the country and other sources, so that in the coming years, our entire, you could say, financing gap reduces, actually, right? And of course, recently, one big hurdle that we are also facing is how some of the international credit agencies have slightly downgraded us. And I think that revival of the program and bringing in reform within our expenditures and revenues, that is going to help revive our credit ratings as well, and that is going to give a very positive signal to the international community as well.
Shaaf, you know that the first shipment of the Russian crude oil is also expected to arrive in this very month. How is that going to help stabilize Pakistan's economy, its energy security, and reduce our import bill?
I think it's a slight, you could say, early to comment on that, because it's the first shipment, and then there's a lot of things that are going to be tested with it, how we are going to refine it, how the refineries are going to use it, and then overall increasing,
What are the
managing the supply
expectations?
chain.
All right, let me rephrase it. What are the
But
expectations?
yes, I'd say that it's a step in the right direction, right? But we should not, let's say too much about it right now. But I think it is a step in the right direction, which, if we are able to establish a proper supply chain, and if we are able to get it in slightly cheaper rate compared to what we are getting right now, so then that could be a very good prospect for us in the future. But I think
We've
let's not
already
get too much into it
have
too
had
early.
a slight reduction as far as the rates are concerned. Let's look forward to more such
Yeah.
reductions
Yeah.
when and
So,
if
so
the
let's
Russian
not.
crude
Yeah.
oil arrives. That
So
is true.
let's not
Shaaf,
get
also,
too much into it. Right.
yes,
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 please.
Shaaf, go ahead.
Please, please. Yeah, so I was saying, let's not get too excited about it early on, but I would say it's a step in the right direction. So once we have established that entire supply chain, I believe that's when we are going to benefit really from this Russian oil as well.
All right, Shaaf, I'd also like to understand how important is the next budget, and how important is it that it be people friendly?
Well, I think budgets are always very important, because they set the tone for the entire year. And if you're not able to fulfill the commitments that we have made within the budget from expenditure side as well as the revenue side, you are forced to bring in mini budgets within the year. So, of course, the country and the economic activity on the overall has been in a rather testing phase during the last year or so. So this time, this budget, they not only need to provide relief to the masses, but they also need to take steps where they're able to put the economy back on track. Where we last year we had an expectation of 5% of economic growth, but we ended up with 0.29. So now we need to think that this time, what are we going to predict, or what are we going to forecast, and how we have to ensure that we achieve that, because
All right.
such a massive gap is gives a very negative signal. So we have to make up for that as well in the coming budget and coming financial year.
I understand that, Shaaf. There have been certain schemes that have been recently been announced. Shaza, who is the special representative on the youth affairs, has announced a laptop scheme that was there during the time of Mr. Nawaz Sharif in the past as well. Do you feel it's imperative, it's very important to engage our youth, and schemes like these could involve the youth in, becoming more entrepreneurial? And do you feel this is also the need of the hour under the circumstances, with the Prime Minister also saying that he wants to revive the SMEs?
Look, Omar, we are a country of 220 million people and increasing, and majority of our population is the youth. So it's not just a population of 220 plus million people for now. It's a 220 plus million population for the next 3 decades at least, right? So it's very important for this. For the future of the country, that the youth is engaged in economic activity, in fruitful economic activity, where not only do they contribute to the country's economy, but they also gain from that. They are also able to grow professionally and personally as well. So the focus towards the youth is very important. It's good that the government is looking to introduce such opportunities for the youth. But then again, of course, we have to look for years beyond just the usual schemes that we have. We need to increase. We need to think of how we can help them start make up their own startup, where we can actually see them contributing, earning themselves, being employees, and deploying more people as well, and generating employment as well as generating economic activity.
Let's talk about the current account deficit that you've mentioned as well, that has declined by 68% to 3.8 billion during the first 8 months of the current fiscal year. Also, for the second month in a row, foreign direct investment has jumped on month by 62%. How important are these indicators for Pakistan's economy?
I think if we see just on these indicators, of course, they are important. But what needs to also be seen is how these have been achieved. Specifically for the current account deficit that has been reduced this year, the government was forced into taking some measures where they had to restrict a lot of imports, and that while reduce the current account deficit, it ended up killing a lot of economic activity as well. So now what really needs to be done is we need to see how to be able to sustain this, how we are able to move from a consumption-based import system where, okay, yes, our imports might increase when we're trying to facilitate the industry, but once that industry, of course, grows, then that will actually help in increasing our exports in the long run as well. And for that, it's important that we work on our labor productivity, on our human capital as well, to make this reduction in current account deficit sustained, so that with slight maneuvering of maybe policy, something, this current account deficit should not increase once again, as has happened with our growth cycles. We gain a lot of economic growth in 1 or 2 years, but that's not sustained. It falls immediately after. We saw how in the last couple of years we had maybe 5 and 6% of economic growth, but then again that was not sustained either. So with slight changes in the overall economic situation of Pakistan, of the entire global as well, we saw a major reduction in our economic growth. Same should not happen with our current account deficit as well. We need to take measures into account where we are able to sustain this reduction in the current account deficit, and then move on from there in increasing our exports to increase productivity of our human capital.
Now, speaking of measures to be taken, I'd refer you back again to the meeting that our Prime Minister attended with that concerned the industrial sector of Pakistan, and he said that the government intends to reduce production costs for industries by providing low-cost energy and facilitating easy bank loans for small-scale industries. How much of an effect can this have on our industrial sector if and when this is implemented?
I think yes, availability of loans to the private sector is very important if we want to increase, if we want to have expansion in the industrial sector as well. But that also, we also need to take into consideration that the government should not be crowding out the loanable funds by taking loans from the private sector itself, right? So the first thing that, of course, that starts with is how the government manages its fiscal, its deficit. If the government manages to reduce its deficit and not be in a position where it has to take more loans from the commercial banks, then that will help in creating more room for the private sector to take those loans and benefit from that, be it the large scale manufacturing industries or be it the youth for their new startups or something, or this SME sector. So I think it's a chain of mayas, I would say, not just one single maya, but it's a chain of policies, an entire package of policies that need to be put in place to have an effective role to play in this.
I think this effective role is extremely important. The coming days and weeks are extremely important for Pakistan's economy as well, and how the people are going to react to it, and how people friendly our next budget is going to be. Coming to the ECNEC and the Executive Committee of the National Economic Council, that yesterday gave its approval for a comprehensive package of development projects amounting to over 1.2 trillion. Development, helping the masses, ease of doing business is also something that we've been hearing for quite some time in the last few days. Development projects are also extremely important for all the provinces and also generally for Pakistan. Do you feel ECNEC is moving in the right direction?
Well, I think what we also need to understand in this is that we have quite a large throw forward in our development expenditure, which means development projects that were started in the previous years, but they have not yet been completed. So a lot of this 1.2 trillion that is going to be allocated, that is going to be allocated to already running projects. So I think what needs to be done is that the new projects, if they are being started, they need to be ones which are able to generate their own returns. A lot of times we have seen that a lot of development expenditure is spent on projects that do not benefit or do not generate their own return, right? So that's a cost that the government keeps on bearing for years and years. And right now, the throw forward is for 20 years, which means the current, you could say, package of the entire development projects, it will take 20 years of allocation of development funds to complete. So we need to be very careful with the new projects that we are going to initiate this year and in the coming years. These need to be ones that yes, we do allocate funds for them, but they need to be generating some revenue and some sort of, you could say, return on investment for the government as well. And that's going to be a sustainable model for our development expenditure. Else that is in itself going to become a more burden for the government.
All right, Shaaf, last question. As an economist, what are your expectations from the budget? What are your expectations from the government in order to stabilize Pakistan's economy? What do you predict is going to happen in the next couple of weeks?
Well, on a personal note, I think what I would be hoping for in this budget is some really, you could say, major reform that the government would be taking. Reforms in shape of reducing its expenditures particularly, because we see that the government footprint in the economy is over 60% of the GDP. So there has to be a reduction of that in terms of the state-owned enterprises, in terms of the various government agencies. So I hope that the government would be starting a reform process where they would be looking into the government agencies and the state-owned enterprises, where they could maybe, there are three things that they could done. That they could do in this. Number one, where they could see that what agencies need to be shut down if they are not contributing positively. Secondly, if there is any agency that could be privatized. And thirdly, how they are going to introduce a corporate setup within the government agencies, which the government must keep, because not every agency can be privatized. I think that's something that I'm really looking forward to within this budget, because that is going to help the entire, managing the expenditure side. There has always been a lot of talk by within our governments, by the IMF, by the World Bank, and all the donor agencies about increasing the revenue. But we have seen how increasing the revenue far beyond has actually been counterproductive for our economic activity, because it kills economic activity if it's increased beyond the point. There hasn't been much focus on reducing the expenditures of the government. So it's important for this government, I'd say, that in this budget, they start the process and the reform process of reducing the expenditure as well, because that in itself is going to help reduce its, you could say, primary deficit as well. And
All
then,
right.
of course, second thing that I'm also looking forward to is how it's going to manage the long-term debt profile, because debt repayments take up a lot of our budget and do not leave the government with a lot of room as well. So these are the two things that I look forward to.
All right, Shaaf, thank you so much to have joined us. It was a pleasure interacting with you for the first time, and inshallah we'll be seeing more of you in the coming days and weeks. That was Mohammed Shaaf, Najib, economist, joining us to talk about the different measures that the government has taken, whether it be slashing the prices of petrol, or of course other important amenities like ghee, edible oil, and of course the rupee that is stabilizing vis-a-vis the dollar. Let's come to our second segment, ladies and gentlemen. That concerns the virtual SCO summit, and the emphasis is on virtual. In July, there's going to be an SCO summit that India is hosting, and this is going to be a virtual summit. Why is India hosting a virtual summit in this day and age when the threat of COVID has more or less disappeared? Are there other risks that India is considering, like China, like Pakistan, or are there other risks that we have yet to ascertain? We've been joined by Khalid Taimoor Akram. He's the Executive Director of the PRCCSF, and he is in the studios to discuss that and much, much more. Thank you very much, Khalid Akram, to have joined us. India has, has now assumed the chair of the Shanghai Cooperation Organization for 2023. But as you very well know, it has this history of politicizing forums. We've seen what happened to SAARC. We've seen what happened to FATF, G20 as well, recently as well, in the summit that was being held on tourism in the Indian Held Valley. What are your expectations? What are your prospects? What do you foresee as far as India being the head of SCO is concerned? Do you feel it is going to be a productive head, or do you feel it will show the same example as is shown in the past?
Yes, India is these days basically wearing two hats. India is also chair of the SCO, and they are also chair of the G20 also. In the past, we have seen that at any platform where Pakistan is there as a member, India has been ridiculing that platform. We have seen what has happened with the SAARC. And in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, Pakistan and India, they become members at the same time in 2017. But ever since then, India has always been trying to create hurdles for Pakistan in the SCO platform. But now India has shown its clear inclination towards G20 because the SCO head of the state summit India has planned in this in July, and in September they have planned the head of the state meeting of G20. So India has practically deprived the regional countries' heads for getting together because they have preferred G20 over the Shanghai Cooperation Organization. And India assumed the chairmanship of Shanghai Cooperation Organization last year in September, and they will be completing their tenure in this year in September. And we have seen that India has organized very less events as far as SCO is concerned, just to keep Pakistan out of it. And secondly, we recently saw a very successful visit of our foreign minister, Mr. Bilawal Bhutto Zardari, to India, in which he attended the Shanghai Cooperation Organization meeting. And while sitting in India, he had confronted India with many things, including Indian claims of labeling Pakistan as a terrorist state. And after the foreign minister's visit to India, there was a lot of backlash
Is this one of the reasons why the SCO summit is being held virtually? Because they are afraid if another Pakistan leader goes to India, that the effect will be similar, if not much more aggravated.
This is one of the reasons, but the main reason is G20. Because in G20, China and Russia are already there.
Of course.
And India wants the Chinese president and the Russian president to come to G20. And but as I said, India has deprived the regional country heads a pleasant get-together in the shape of the SCO head of the states meeting. And it was just a surprise for all of us that all of a sudden the Indian Foreign Ministry announced the date of the virtual summit on 4th. But basically, India, this shows that India is giving more importance to G20, and India is trying to downplay Shanghai Cooperation Organization, and I am sure that in the long run it will not go well. The Indian stance will not go well in the Shanghai Cooperation Organization.
Is it also not trying to downgrade the Shanghai spirit?
Yes, it is basically, we have seen that any regional platform in which Pakistan is playing a dominant role, India tries to downplay it. We have seen what has happened with the SAARC, but we hope that this thing will not happen to SCO, because India's presidency will now come back to India maybe after 10 years, because SCO now has 8 permanent members, and 2 Iran and Belarus will become permanent members very soon. So this presidency will come back to India after 10 years. But holding this head of the state seminar conference virtual has clear-cut shown the Indian inclination more towards
intention
G20.
towards regional priorities, regional perspectives versus global perspectives.
Yes,
and we have clearly seen what it wants to, where it wants to go.
Exactly, you are right, because India wants to pose, and it is posing to the world that now they are a global power, and they do not care about the region. But the one thing they do not understand is this, that we all are the neighbors of each other. If you are not good with the neighbors, the world is not going to acknowledge this thing. And if you remember, once Mr. Modi came to power for the first time, he adopted, he said that he is going to adopt the policy of neighborhood first. But in last 7-8 years, we have seen that he has, instead of adopting the policy of neighborhood first, he has adopted to start problems with all the neighbors. India has problems with Nepal, India has problems with Sri Lanka, India has problems with China, India has problems with Pakistan. So none of the neighboring countries having borders with India are happy with India.
Now, Khalid Sahab, also, do you feel that India and multilateralism are moving slowly and steadily far apart?
Yes, it is, because recently we have seen India try to organize a tourism conference of G20 in Indian held occupied Kashmir, and we have seen countries like Turkey and China and few other countries refusing to go there and attend that conference, which is a clear-cut manifestation that the world does not recognize Indian policies. But I am afraid that this action of India in Shanghai Cooperation Organization, I am sure it will not go well with the Chinese also, because this Shanghai Cooperation Organization is basically the initiative of China, and in which they have Russia, they have all the Central Asian countries, and now many countries of Middle East and other region are getting together in this platform, and I'm sure everybody is watching that what are they doing. As I said, that their main aim is to downplay SCO and to glorify G20, because they think that G20 is a group of those 20 countries in which India is, which is basically controlling the world economics.
But you know, Khalid Sahab, the fact remains that India is president of the G20 also for this year. What happens next year? What happens to the SCO now that it will be very apparent to the regional countries of what India's priorities are? And also, do you feel that the political stakes that India has vis-a-vis Pakistan, vis-a-vis China, are also going to pose a great obstacle in the future meetings of the SCO as well?
Yes, but we must also see that India is having their more political stakes with Western countries rather than with the regional countries. They are strategic partners with America, they are strategic partners with many European countries, they are strategic
what I wanted, the angle that I wanted to ask you about was, for example, Pakistan, India is will be going through elections in next year.
Yes.
But if For example, it invites Pakistan, and this SCO summit was not a virtual summit. And if our Prime Minister talked to the media and highlighted Pakistan's stance on important issues, that would also have a very serious backlash.
Yes, I agree on that. I agree on that. I think once the Foreign Minister and the Prime Minister of India were planning this conference, the Bilawal Bhutto's visit must be at the back of their mind, because whatever we saw on the Indian media, there was a lot of backlash on our Foreign Minister's conference, and our Foreign Minister had advocated Pakistan's stance in a very excellent way. And yes, I am sure Indians must be worried that if in this head of the state meeting Pakistani Prime Minister goes to India, and then as everybody knows in the world that what kind of relationship we have with China, and on the sidelines of the SCO meeting, if our Prime Minister had met with the Chinese President on the Indian soil, that would have given a shock to the
that is
Indian
what India
government.
doesn't want, obviously.
That's what they don't want on their soil. That is one of the major reasons also, apart from G20, that they are afraid of the backlash from their media, because Indian media is quite strong, and they criticize a lot their government, and also they have criticized the handling of our Foreign Minister's visit, and they even questioned their government.
That was a very strong visit and very important visit of our Foreign Minister to India, and I think it put a lot of things in the right path as far as Pakistan's perspective on issues, especially that of an illegally occupied Jammu and Kashmir is concerned. Does India fear the same diplomatic response had it had normal SCO summit in the month of July, as compared to what happened in Goa, and how our able Foreign Minister managed to handle the Indian press quite efficiently?
Actually, if this summit would have happened as planned, then media from all over the world would be focusing on this, because all the countries in this SCO, they are the SCO consists of almost 1/3 of the population of the world. We have 4 nuclear powers in SCO: Pakistan, India, China, and Russia. And then we have very important Central Asian countries part of this, and then we have our observer states. Even Azerbaijan is a observer state. Then we have China and Belarus are going to be members of SCO very soon. So with all this media hype and everything, I think it got on the nerves of the Indian government, and they decided to hold this virtual. And also they have announced a date which is 4th of July. They just gave the reaction time of almost a month, so that less media hype is created. And in virtual summit, we have seen virtual summits during the COVID time, that only the essential speeches are made for 2 to 3 minutes. There is no interaction of media, there is nothing. So I think
it is also one of the reasons that they are holding it virtually, because they don't want a reaction from the world press. They don't want the world press to counter, ask questions from the different SCO leaders.
Yes, one reason is this also, and another reason is this, that if President Xi Jinping and Mr. Putin would have attended this summit now, then they would not come back again to India in September. But India wants to have a power show in September, that right on the Indian soil and in Indian capital, the 20 head of the states from around the world standing over there. So basically, I am sure that they must be keeping that thing in their mind and downplaying SCO. But India does not realize this thing, that if they try to downplay SCO, tomorrow the presidency will go to some other country. And
SCO is not SARC, SCO
is not SARC. Yes. SCO is not SARC. And tomorrow Pakistan is going to become Pakistan will have the chairmanship of SCO. So will the Indian government try to evade attendance in that summit?
Time will tell. Only time.
Only time will tell that.
But Khalid Sahab, the theme of the summit is towards a secure SCO, and I'm highlighting it because with the SECURE acronym is coined by the Indian Prime Minister at the 2018 SCO summit, representing security, economy, trade, connectivity, unity, respect for sovereignty and territorial integrity and environment. Do you feel that a secure SCO is possible under this current Hindutva RSS based ideology of the Indian government in power, with its vision of Akhund Bharat and all the other visions also that it has?
Not at all, because Mr. Vajpayee, this Mr. Modi gave this narrative in 2018 just to basically pinpoint Pakistan, because India always blames Pakistan for cross-border terrorism. So in last couple of years we have seen that this narrative has badly failed, because none of the regional countries has bought this narrative. Coming over to keeping this theme now, if this conference, India basically wants to again probably highlight the same thing, because if you see the speech of the Indian Foreign Minister at the Foreign Ministers Summit in Goa, we would find out that he, in the veiled language, he tried to blame Pakistan. And I'm sure during the speech of Mr. Modi during this forthcoming SCO summit, he would again try to link the theme with cross-border terrorism, because
but that has been the intention all along, hasn't it?
Yes, it is their intention, because they want to hide what is happening in India. Right now, I think the amount of separatist movements which are going on in India are unprecedented. In every other province of India there is a separatist movement. They are not able to control their own people. They are not able to, whatever is happening in occupied Kashmir is in front of everybody. Whatever is happening in Assam, whatever is happening even in Delhi and Bombay, there are in Manipur, and we have seen in Ladakh also. India is at odds with China. At the Nepal border also, at the even India is at odds with a small country like Bhutan. They have developed some kind of border issues with them. So right now the internal situation of India is very bad, and we recently saw Indian Air Force penalizing their 4 officers on the accidental missile firing also, which clearly indicates that the internal systems of the Indian Armed Forces, their internal command and control system is not in their control, because otherwise they would have not given punishment to the 4 senior officers of the Air Force for the missile firing, which they had been denying in last couple of months.
Now, one of the basic aims is regional peace and security of the SCO. Do you feel this virtual summit will gain any kind of ground as far as that is concerned?
No, it's going to. I think India has tried to play their cards to downplay this summit. It is just going to be virtual summit with no presence of media or anything, and it will just have, at the end of the day, it will just have a press release, and that's all. And that is what is the aim of India, is to downplay SCO, because India is not pushed about region, India is not pushed about neighborhood, and India's policy is neighborhood last policy, because they think that they are becoming a world power. They think that since they are part of G20, so they think that they do not consider smaller countries and region.
How can a country like India, I mean, of any country whatsoever, jeopardize regional security, jeopardize regional alignment or development?
They can't. They can't. As I said, that it is just this year that they have tried it, and it's good that India had their presidency before Pakistan, because this presidency of SCO has basically exposed India very badly. Now the regional countries exactly know that where does India stand, because India wants to have trade with the regional countries, they want to have good relations with the regional countries, they want to have good relations with China and Russia. But this action has basically exposed Indian intention, and also it has the regional countries now realize that where does India stands vis-a-vis its position regionally and globally, because India has shown its clear alignment with the European countries and with America.
Finally, Khalid Saab, do you feel now, I mean, this year, of course, India is heading the SCO, but starting from September, when another, country takes over, will all the countries of the SCO now openly realize India's intentions as far as being part of the SCO is concerned, and do you feel they will understand which countries to align with within the SCO and which to sideline?
Exactly. If we see the history of SCO, let's just focus on the last presidency of Uzbekistan. During their presidency, they arranged almost 20 plus big events. They arranged the conference of the defense ministers, foreign ministers, culture ministers, think tanks, exchange programs, and it was a complete happening year.
Exactly.
And let's see the Indian presidency, ever since they have taken over their presidency since September 2022, there have been hardly any meetings. There was one meeting of the defense ministers, which was again virtual, then the foreign minister meeting they had, and then
which backfired on them.
Backfired on them, and now they are having this virtual meeting. So India has, as I said before, that they are having, they are enjoying the G20 presidentship, and every month they are inviting the G20 members to their country and having so many conferences. So it has given a very clear picture to the regional countries, and I'm sure in times to come, once the regional countries will be dealing with India, they will keep this thing in mind, that what India did to this regional platform in their 1 year of presidency.
We already have the history of India as being part of SAARC and how it jeopardized SAARC as well. And I think China and Russia are two countries that understand this very well. Thank you so very much, Khalid. Taimoor. Akram Saab, Executive Director of PRCCSF, to have joined us and to have talked to us about this virtual summit of the SCO that is going to be held on the 4th of July, also the Independence Day of the United States of America. And it's going to be held virtually. Let's see how things go along, but of course, as you yourself have said, not much expectations need to be put as far as this summit is concerned.
Exactly.
Let's come to our last two stories very quickly. The first is the visit of our Prime Minister Mohammad Shehbaz Sharif to attend the inauguration ceremony of newly re-elected President of Turkey, Mr. Recep Tayyip Erdogan. This is happening on the 3rd of this month, the day after tomorrow, and our Prime Minister has been invited to attend, and of course this is also an example of the deep-rooted ties that exist between Turkey and Pakistan. The Prime Minister is also extended an invitation to President Erdogan to attend the 7th meeting of the High-Level Strategic Cooperation Council that is going to be held in Islamabad on the occasion. So of course, this highlights the time-tested relationship that both these countries have had and will continue to have. Finally, the US House of Representatives have voted yes on a debt ceiling deal. Speaker Kevin McCarthy did face an opposition in his own party to a deal that was hammered out with the White House to avoid default, because had this bipartisan bill not been passed, the US was in serious risk of defaulting. And we always talk of developing countries defaulting, but no, this time this was also the United States of America. This is not the first time that the United States of America has been at such a at such a limit. It has also happened in the past. Now the House has passed the bill 314 to 117 in a late night sitting. On Wednesday, the bill is now going to go to the Senate, where the Democrats do have a slim majority. Biden said, and I quote, "This agreement is good news for the American people and the American economy." Nevertheless, Republican House Speaker Kevin McCarthy had faced a divided party as he had rallied the votes for this 99-page deal, which would suspend the 31.4 trillion US dollars borrowing limit until January of 2025. Now, swift passage, of course, later in the week by the Senate will ensure that the government checks will continue to go out to the Social Security recipients, veterans and others. And of course, there are so many other social programs that are associated with this. So let's wish our American friends all the very best. And of course, for the moment, the US House of Representatives has voted yes. So I hope the Senate will also vote yes. With that, we come to an end of today's newsroom. We'll see you inshallah tomorrow with new stories segments that pertain to us, you and Pakistan. Stay safe. Allah Hafiz.